just a moment. The last remaining folks are just waiting for a signal that our simulcast is ready to begin broadcasting. You guys are better than any class I've ever taught. Wow, the power of the podium. I'm looking in the back. Are we good? Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome on this rainy day to American University. I am Diana Burley, Vice Provost for Research here at American, and it is my honor to open the program and to introduce President Sylvia Burwell. President Burwell, as the 15th and first woman to lead our institution, absolutely. President Burwell embodies the transformational spirit present here at American University. She joined the university in 2017 after holding not one but two cabinet positions as Secretary of Health and Human Services and as the Director of the Office of Management and Budget. From the moment President Burwell arrived on campus, her passion for impactful research and learning has been evident, as has her steadfast commitment to inclusive excellence. Her wisdom forms the foundation of today's celebration as we embrace and honor the changemaker ethos and collectively act to lead societal change. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming President Sylvia Matthews Burwell.
Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you very much. And good morning to everybody. I want to thank you all for joining us on this wet morning that I know it's harder to get around with the weather here, so thank you all for joining us this morning. I also want to thank everyone in terms of the folks that helped put this entire event together, our staff, our faculty, our deans that are here, and thank you all for joining us to celebrate a trailblazer. A trailblazer who's an AU Eagle and the next Secretary General of the International Telecommunication Union, Doreen Bogdan-Martin. And I want to thank John Sod and Guidehouse for sponsoring today's event as well. And as recent cyber attacks, and we've seen that with our colleagues down the way at Howard, have made really clear, preparing for a rapidly changing digital climate is crucial to the safety and security of our school, of our nation, and of our world. And that's why we believe it's so important to have deeply experienced, respected, and highly strategic leaders like Doreen at the helm. And as a graduate of American University School of International Service with 30 years, she was very young when she started, of high-level experience in international and intergovernmental relations, Doreen is more than equipped to face the cybersecurity challenges of the future. But I think what is really going to set Doreen apart in that role is her work to bridge the digital and gender divides, which exemplifies, as Diana was referring to, the changemaker ethos here at American University. And hers is a career that is rooted in exciting innovations, made possible by technology, but yet driven by the purpose of employing that technology in pursuit of a more just and equitable world. Diversity and inclusivity are more important now than ever before as we face new and diverse challenges across multiple sectors. And that's why AU is aggressively promoting and supporting inclusivity in tech, as well as leading in technology policy outcomes that are fair and equitable. And I'm especially proud that a number of our expert faculty, as I look through this audience, are here today to join us, and we celebrate their work as well. And if we're ever going to keep pace with the ever-changing landscape of technology and cybercrime, we need these scholars' voices. We need their diverse skills, and we need the perspectives and ideas that they have to offer. And I couldn't be prouder that some of this critical work is going on right here at American University. And no one understands, and I also want to mention that we have some of our students here today which is another important part of what we do here in this space. So I want to thank the students for coming as well. No one understands technology from the importance of cultivating a diverse tech workforce to enhancing cybersecurity better than our keynote speaker, National Cyber Director Chris Ingles. Serving as President Biden's top security cyber advisor, Ingles is a formidable leader in the cybersecurity field. He served for 28 years at the NSA and for 7.5 years as its senior civilian deputy director. With his quiet but persuasive leadership style, he's cultivated strong relationships and garnered bipartisan respect in Congress, something I know that's very hard to do, having been through that. So without further ado, let me say once again, congratulations to Doreen and introduce National Cybersecurity Director Chris Ingles. Chris, thank you for being here, especially because Chris has a hearing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's a most warm and generous introduction. I will try to keep that echoing in the back of my mind when I'm testifying in open session before the Senate later this morning. What a privilege, what a pleasure, what an honor it is to be here this morning amongst all of you, but especially to honor and acknowledge the present and future service of Doreen. So I do serve as the inaugural National Cyber Director. You can tell that I'm trying to hold up my end of the bargain. I have many devices here. I'm trying to back off a little bit. But if any of you have not had the chance to turn your cell phones off, if you just hold them up, point them towards me, and I'll do that for you at the moment. Of course, I can't do that here anyway. But I bring those out actually to make a point, which is it's not surprising to any of us that I have 2 of those and several others. We're massively connected to this telecommunications world. Some of us call it the internet. I call it cyberspace because it's that plus people, its roles, responsibilities, and it's done in the presence of an adversary. Whether that adversary is simply complacency or human error or a squirrel chewing into a cage somewhere, an electrical grid, or an actual adversary. This is hard stuff. And the question that's often asked about that massive interconnectivity and the dependence that comes along with it, is it boon or bane? Does it work for us? Does it work against us? My view, and I'm boldly optimistic about this, is of course it's a boon. Of course it's a stunning advantage for us. We could not have developed the vaccines that we did over the last 2 years without the interaction of scientists around the world. We could not take on the challenge of climate change, at least have a strategy for dealing with climate change, but for the interaction and the deep thinking that we can do on top of massive processing and the access to data. We could not achieve the aspirations as individuals, nation states, or coalitions if we didn't have that connectivity that allowed us to think faster, think deeper, think better as a group, holistically, other than as stovepipes that essentially got us to this place in time. And yet, that domain is under massive assault, in part because of complacency, in part because of human error, and in part because it's being held at risk by those who would transgress the normal and sundry rules in that space. The remedy, of course, is to be found in several things. Often, at that moment, people immediately think about technology, the latest and kind of clever technology that might bring to bear. But I think about something else, which actually I think is right at the heart of this school and Doreen's service, which one of my favorite quotes ever, I actually have it framed, and it's the only thing I have in my office at the moment. It's a spare Spartan office, right? So your taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely, I hope. But the quote reads like this, and I think many of you will immediately recall where it came from. It said, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil in the world is for good people to do nothing." Essentially turns common sense on its head, which is to kind of like say it's not simply about stopping kind of the bad things in the world. It's about doing good things in the world. It's about taking a very positive, proactive stance and saying, need to step out and do something about this. Doreen, of course, across the entirety of her career, present and future, has done just that. The School of International Service emphasized service as the point. You know, it might be done in an international context, which is essential, but it's all about service. It's all about getting out and doing something with that hard-won education, those hard-won relationships, and bringing those to bear for good in the world. So my sense of what we need to do in the telecommunications arena, we certainly need to build it right. We need to make sure that it is sufficiently resilient and robust and delivers the primary services. We certainly need to make sure that it's defensible. we then need to actually defend it. And the best way to do that is to use a coalition of like-minded people who understand what good looks like in that space, what's accepted behavior, what's unacceptable behavior, how do we reward the good behavior, how do we hold at risk those who exercise bad behavior, and how do we operate in coalitions, in partnerships, where those transgressors have to defeat all of us to beat one of us. That's a new idea, right? That's not something that we've been doing well, especially in cyberspace for many years, where division of effort or deconfliction tend to be the usual organizing principle. Division of effort, of course, is an agreement to not collaborate. We'll meet at a seam. We assume that seam is static and stable, and it'll always be where we left it when we turn away. Of course, on the undulating landscape of cyber, we turn back, it's missing. And deconfliction is even worse, which is we'll just kind of practice the big sky or the big sea theory, and we won't assume that we're going to collide with one another because there's just plenty of space. There isn't plenty of space. We're in a very crowded space. So we need to actually strive for collaboration. And I'll just close by saying why. Not simply because it allows us to combine our various talents, efforts, insights, kind of on a common platform of values and aspirations, but because only in collaborating can we actually find the dots that are going to be the basis of a strategy going forward. After 9/11, you might remember that we talked long and hard about we failed to connect the dots. We did fail to connect the dots. But what we really failed to do, more than that, was we failed to form some dots. Because one of us had a hunch, someone else had an assumption, somebody else had a shard or a shred of information. And because we failed to compare and contrast that in a truly collaborative way, we failed to actually see what was happening across the boundaries that otherwise separated us. And we failed to see something that we couldn't see in one of the stovepipes because we didn't connect them in the appropriate ways. That's what I think we need to do going forward. We need to commit to service. We need to commit to doing that in the largest possible context, the international context, and we need to do so in a collaborative way. So the strategy for the Biden administration, not new or novel, is to make ourselves a harder target, resilience and robustness in technology, people, and roles and responsibilities, to actually defend what then results, because at best it's defensible, it must then be defended, to do so in a coalition such that an adversary has to beat all of us to beat one of us. That would be interesting. Crowdsource them the way they've been crowdsourcing us. And then to align actions to consequences. Rewards for good behavior, we should help victims, not re-victimize them. And consequences of a negative sort for transgressors. But if we do all of those things leading up to that, the transgressors will be few, they'll be starkly visible on that open landscape, and we can bring all the instruments of power to bear, whether it's public shaming, diplomacy, legal sanctions, financial sanctions, and at the end of the day, maybe even cyber on cyber. But let's think about this as something other than a technology problem, as Doreen has across her career. I close by simply saying thank you for allowing me to participate in this. We're privileged and honored to bear witness to an extraordinary career that is not yet fully written, and so we're very anxious to assist you in the rest of your journey. There's some terrific pages yet to be written. Thank you all.
I know you join me in thanking. I know his remarks were brief because he has to get to the Hill, but he touched on all of the themes that we really are here to highlight and celebrate today. The first of those themes is action, right? It is not sufficient for us to simply look at problems to say, well, somebody else will take advantage of this, somebody else will take care to act, but for us to really get in there and begin to do the work that is necessary to truly shape tech policy in a way that, that makes it work for all of us. The second theme that he talked about was inclusiveness. And he did that in a number of different ways, not just inclusiveness in terms of the people who participate, but also thinking across those boundaries that are often artificially put into place, and thinking across the stovepipes that we need bureaucratically sometimes, but that prevent us from truly looking holistically at the challenges and developing solutions that will allow us to address them. Here at American University, we are meeting that challenge. We are acting. We are acting collaboratively, and we are acting across stovepipes that allow us to think through and develop robust solutions to the challenges that the world faces in tech policy and frankly, in other ways as well. I am going to turn to my notes because I want to make sure that I highlight the different faculty members and the research that is being done across a number of different dimensions that will allow you to see and to get a sense of how we are addressing inclusive tech policy here at American University. I would say first that as we think through this and as I talk about the individuals who are doing the work, I want you to know that we recognize the importance that the technological infrastructure plays not just in thinking specifically about technology, but about society and how our foundation of technology is really driving everything that we are doing in society to evolve. And as such, we have to make sure that the people who develop the policies, the people who use the technology, people who develop the technology, are guided by policies that are truly developed by inclusive members of our community who all will play a role in working through those issues. So our work is comprehensive. And I want to talk to it from the standpoint of research. So first, I will highlight Professor Hang Su in our Kogod School of Business, who leads our Cybersecurity Governance Center, where she looks at things surrounding issues surrounding fairness in artificial intelligence and how we can ensure that the development of these advanced technologies are truly inclusive and help the broad sense of society as opposed to leaving different members out. I would highlight my own work in cyber education, developing curricular guidelines to shape the way that we train that next generation, the workforce who will be working to ensure that our systems are secure. I would highlight our colleague, Derek Cogburn, whose work not only in internet governance, but also in the connection between tech policy and disability studies, ensure that we bring everyone, regardless of their ability, to the table and that the policies work for them. And our colleague Laura DeNardis, who leads the Internet Governance Lab, who is a world-known leader in internet governance and in understanding the ways in which the foundation of our technological infrastructure needs to advance and be inclusive of all members of society. But not only do we do our work in research, we also have academic programs, and so as you think about the way that we are developing that next generation, we have a cybersecurity certificate in our School of Public Affairs led by Sasha O'Connell that is ensuring that our next generation of public administrators have the background and the understanding of the cybersecurity issues that their constituents in cities, towns, states, and really jurisdictions around the world will face as they continue to access citizen services. We have a technology, law, and society program led by Gary Korn in our Washington College of Law, which blends together the issues surrounding regulation and policy, along with the technology and the individuals that are using that technology. And so how do we think through the blending of those things and develop our lawyers and our legal infrastructure in a way that is truly able to help us secure and be secure in the technology and in the policies? Policy engagement. So not only do we have state-of-the-art research in this area, develop academic programs, but we also engage directly with congressional leaders. I would give you an example of our faculty colleague, Audrey Cronin, in our School of International Service, who regularly advises congressional leaders on issues surrounding terrorism and that link to new technology and also disinformation. And I would point to members of our community like our scholars and residents. We at AU are fortunate to be in the nation's capital where we are able to take advantage in the best possible way of leaders in government like KornerStone, who is a scholar in residence at our Washington College of Law on loan from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, to provide that direct corridor back and forth so that we are both informed by and directly informing the policy and the practice resulting from that policy on a daily basis. The final way that shapes all of the work that we do here at American University in tech policy and specifically in allowing us to think inclusively around tech policy is in community building. Holding convenings such as this one, where we bring together leaders in government, leaders in industry, leaders in the academy across a variety of different disciplines so that we have a multitude of perspectives. Bring them together to host and convene critical conversations around topics of critical importance and allowing us to think freely. As Director Inglis said, the challenge that we face and that we have faced and that we have to recognize that the only way that we will get over this challenge is by avoiding the stovepipes that keep us talking to ourselves. And so holding convenings such as this one allow us to bring together audiences from these different groups and engage in conversations in an environment where you feel free to raise questions, where you feel free to push back against the responses that you receive, and to continue to grow and evolve your understanding. I will tell you before I get into the specifics of our conversation today or of our purpose here today, that the next convening that we are thinking about putting together, and I welcome your input and participation, is in looking at digital currency and sustainability. We often hear about how governments around the world are looking at digital currency as potentially official, and I believe one country has already made it an official currency. But what we don't often hear about is the idea of sustainability. How much energy does it take to facilitate that? And how do these two different areas of critical importance, when we think about the global economy and global climate change, how do those two things blend together? So I welcome your participation and your co-thinking with us as we think through that. But that's not why we're here today. Today, we are here to celebrate inclusive tech policy and inclusive excellence in tech policy. And we are here to recognize a very special member of our community. Our alumnus, Doreen Bogdan-Martin, is here today not because she is an alumnus, but because she has truly exemplified the changemaker ethos that we here at AU recognize. And I want to tell you a little bit about the award that we are going to bestow upon her this afternoon or this morning before I tell you a little bit about Doreen. So the award that I am so delighted to honor Doreen with this morning is the Outstanding Technology Policy Changemaker. We established this award to honor individuals who throughout their careers have exhibited a commitment and a consistent pattern of activity designed to advance inclusive global technology policy, and who show no signs of stopping. Recipients need not be alumni of American University. They are global leaders whose passion and dedication to fostering inclusive tech policy lifts up, inspires, and drives change. And I am delighted to tell you about our inaugural recipient, Doreen Bogdan-Martin. Doreen is an alum. She received her master's in international communications policy through our School of International Service. She was elected director of the ITU Telecommunication Development Bureau in November of 2018, and she took office in January of 2019. She is a strategic leader, as President Burwell mentioned, with 30 years of high-level experience in international and intergovernmental relations, and a long history of success in policy, strategy development, analysis, and execution. She has advised governments around the world on policy and regulatory issues, and is a regular presenter at high-level international forums and summits. Prior to her election, Ms. Bogdan-Martin oversaw the organization's membership, corporate communications, external affairs, and UN liaison teams, and was instrumental in establishing the Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development, on which she continues to serve as executive director. So I want to stop here just for a moment to talk about uplifting, because I want to highlight for you the Broadband Commission mission and her impact as a change maker through this commission, where she is uplifting the other half of the world. Whenever we think about broadband connectivity, we think about those of us who have ready access to the technological infrastructure that allows us to engage in the digital economy. Sometimes, though, we forget that there is another half of the world, some of those individuals even within the United States, who don't have access. Doreen is leading and uplifting those individuals so that they can participate as full members of the digital society. Doreen was also one of the principal architects of the annual Global Symposium for Regulators, directed at the ITU's first Global Youth Summit, oversees the contribution to the Equals Global Partnership for Gender Equality in the Digital Age, and others on the GIGA project to connect the world's schools. So again, I want to stop and talk about inspiring, because Doreen's work in these programs is not just helping to advance participation, but she is truly inspiring young women and girls from around the world to take their rightful place in the digital society. And finally, as Doreen prepares to launch her candidacy for Director General, Secretary General of the ITU, and is poised, and this deserves another round of applause, to become the first woman to lead the agency in its over 165-year history, I don't think there is any question about whether she is and will continue to drive change. I cannot think of a more deserving recipient of the inaugural American University Outstanding Technology Policy Changemaker Award. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Doreen Bogdan-Martin on the 2021 and inaugural recipient of the American University Outstanding Technology Policy Changemaker. Doreen. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
It's a box, is right.
Wow. Good morning. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out this morning on this very rainy DC morning. This is such a great honor for me. I'm so very humbled. President Burwell, Vice Provost Burley, members of the faculty, students, friends, apparently some former classmates of mine are also here from AU. I'm so honored and so very, very humbled to receive this inaugural Changemaker Award for Inclusive Technology Policy here at American University. This institution opened my eyes. It opened the door to my career in technology. It opened my eyes to understanding the impact that technology can have on our lives, on each and every one of our lives, the true power, the true potential of technology. When I started here at AU, some of my first courses, I took a course in European policy. And I know we have someone from the European Union here. At the time, it was all about television without frontiers. Anybody remember that? I became an expert on television without frontiers. I remember very fondly some of my classes in cross-cultural communications that also opened my eyes to understanding bias and differences, to multinational corporations, to international communications policy, where I became somewhat obsessed with satellite communications and fascinated by that. I had so many great professors, from Eric Novotny, who was Mr. Satellite working at ComSat at the time, to Dan Handel, who was the general counsel at the Commerce Department. He's the one that helped get me my first internship in the Commerce Department. To Hamid Maulana, who of course passed away, but he was a tremendous inspiration. He oversaw my thesis and really encouraged me. To, of course, Nanette Levinson, who couldn't be here today, but I think she's following remotely, but she also played a very big role. And I think all of my professors and classmates, they inspired me. They inspired my curiosity. They pushed me to do more, and I think they really supported me, and I'm so, so grateful for that. So I wanted to say, by way of context, I started in 1989. What percentage of the world population had access to a fixed line? Any takers? 1989, fixed line, 10%. 10% in 1989. How many people had a mobile phone? Any takers? 1.4 per 1,000. Okay, I didn't have a mobile phone. None of us had mobile phones. Nobody had the internet. 1989, the World Wide Web had just been created by Tim Berners-Lee. We had typewriters. We sent letters, postcards. It was a different world. And I think back at the time, I had no idea how the world was going to change and how technology was going to sort of advance at leaps and bounds. And of course, it has advanced at such an incredible pace. But it hasn't advanced in a way that has been equally beneficial to everyone, and that's the challenge. And I think COVID has been a wake-up call for all of us, because it has actually shown, even here in the United States, what it means to not be connected. We saw kids in the US going to Starbucks to get that Wi-Fi signal in the parking lot. So we saw very clearly what happens when you're not connected. And of course, we have 3.7 billion people out there that are not connected. The importance of digital inclusion and inclusive technology policy, I think, is more important now than ever. And I'm so happy to see this new initiative kind of growing here at AU, because inclusive technology policy has to be our focus. I'm sure that the faculty of diverse backgrounds on this board of this initiative is going to really help to drive its success. And as technology shapes, I think, every aspect of our lives, that interdisciplinary focus that Chris spoke about, it's what makes the School of International Service here so different. That interdisciplinary approach is going to be so necessary. Necessary for research, and also necessary, of course, to create the inclusive tech policies that we so need. Having enjoyed myself here at this program, I think it's so exciting to see the changes at the school. I look forward to doing a tour around campus. I hear the SIS building is not what it used to be. It's incredible. I look forward to that. But also, it's great to see the courses and the new initiatives that have taken off. I think the work here will help even our mission at the ITU, where we're committed to connecting the unconnected and to unleashing digital opportunities for all. I think we can count on all of you, on the students of AU, and their change maker ethos to help to leverage the wide-ranging resources that are at hand and really help to lead the implementation of inclusive technologies that are so critical to our digital future. I want to, again, thank you. I'm so humbled, and I'm so very honored to have received this award, to be chosen to be the inaugural recipient of this award, and really look forward to continuing thought leadership and the important work that's going to continue to come out of this initiative. Tech policies set our future direction, and that's why it's so important that tech policies be inclusive. As you all know, the UN 2030 Agenda, and there's lots of big talk about it this week as the high-level week continues in New York. The 2030 Agenda vows to leave no one behind, and I think each of us must do our part, because we do risk, with 3.7 billion people not online, in leaving a huge part of the population behind. So I encourage all of you to do your part. We look forward to working with you on the ITU side. And again, I want to thank you so much. It's a great honor. Thank you.
Why don't I hold it for you? I can put it in the box. You can go. All right, so just a little, I think I want one of these. It's pretty, isn't it pretty? Let's applaud for Doreen again. Well, Doreen is not done yet, because now I am delighted to introduce to you the dean of the school that you have heard so much about here today, Dean Christine Chin from the School of International Service. Dean Chin is also an AU alumnus, so we are delighted to have her come and introduce the fireside chat to you. And as Dean Chin comes up, I will tell you that her work, she is not just a dean, she is also a scholar of political economy and intercultural affairs in Southeast Asia, and as I like to say, a budding scholar in technology policy, because I believe everybody. So without further ado, I'm going to take my award and leave and invite Dean Chin up, who will introduce our fireside chat. And Dean Chin.
Good morning. Doreen, I think we may have been in a class together. It's always 6 degrees of separation. Thank you, Vice Provost Burley, for your introduction and for an inspiring award ceremony. It is my honor to introduce 2 truly stellar SIS alumnae. Today's award winner and honoree, Doreen Bogdan-Martin, SIS, class of 1990. An award-winning SIS alumna, Fiona Alexander, SIS class of 98. Both Doreen and Fiona have roots not only in SIS, but also at the U.S. Department of Commerce's National Telecommunications Information Agency, or NTIA, where Fiona originally interned as an SIS master's candidate under, of course, the supervision of Dr. Nanette Levinson. It was at NTIA where their paths first crossed, and the rest is history. They went on to build a rich, productive, professional relationship and friendship. Doreen and Fiona both share a commitment to making a difference, and in the process, they live SIS's founding mission of being dedicated to the service of humanity. And they exemplify what American University means when we say challenge accepted, particularly in the realm of national and international policies and practices on digital transformation, cybersecurity, and so forth. Along the way, each of them worked very hard to identify pathways and open doors so as to ensure broader access for others and more inclusive participation, especially of youth and women all over the world. For example, we recently celebrated the 7th anniversary of an initiative co-created by Doreen. It is called Equals, the Global Partnership for Gender Equality in the Digital Age. She's passionate about what we call ICTs, Information Communication Technologies, and their link to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Fiona founded the Internet Governance Lab's Alumni Expert Council, a cross-school initiative here at AU, of which Doreen is an inaugural member. As brilliant, committed mentors, they both worked with our lab's junior fellows, 5 SIS undergraduate students, this past spring to design and implement a memorable Girls in ICT Day. And they are now mentoring the junior fellows, in the design and conduct of an original research project as part of the Road to ADI's ITU initiative. Accepting and meeting challenges have meant that both women have been able and continue to break new ground. They are change makers. You've heard of Doreen's election, first woman to be elected into a top management position at the ITU, and we expect that she will be the ITU's next Secretary General. Fiona is the sole NTIA recipient in the agency's history to receive the President's Distinguished Rank Award. Fiona is co-founder of Salt Point Strategies, and she is Distinguished Policy Strategist in Residence here in SIS. Doreen and Fiona, on behalf of the SIS AU alumni, faculty, who are here with us in person and who've joined us on live stream, it is with much pride that I welcome home 2 extraordinary SIS AU alumni changemakers. Please join us on stage.
The lights are a little bit bright. There we go. So thank you again, everyone, for coming out in the rain, as everyone has said, and to our event today to honor Doreen, but also talk about technology policy here at American University. And we're going to dig in a little bit deeper to some of the things Doreen mentioned in her speech when she was receiving her award. But and if we have time, we'll open it up to a few questions. So if anybody has any, start thinking what those could be. So Doreen, we're going to start by asking a little bit about your time here at AU and how your studies, you mentioned some of the professors, but how the studies themselves eventually led you to this career that you've had thus far and the one that we keep expecting you to do more with. So tell us about your time here.
Well, thank you. If I can, maybe just to go back before my time here. When I was an undergrad, I was passionate about science, chemistry specifically. My whole life, I wanted to be a doctor. It was science, science, science. I did 2 years in chemistry, and then, like many girls often do, became a bit frustrated and left chemistry and moved on to social sciences. When I graduated, I decided to go to Europe, travel around, teach English in Spain, had lots of fun until my dad said, time to come back home and get serious. And so I knew I wanted to go to graduate school, wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something international, and I wanted to do something to help people. And I found this program, and I pick up on what Chris was saying before. It was about service. And so the School of International Service and its offerings enticed me. So I was thrilled to, as I said before, take that opportunity and kick things off here. In terms of my classes, I would say probably the satellite focus is what was the game changer for me. again, thinking about the world context, the fact that we had two basically satellite monopolies, Intelsat and Inmarsat, and I was always fascinated that you could connect the world with just 3 geostationary satellites, and they were monopolies, and all of a sudden there were new companies, PanAmSat being one of them, trying to get onto the communication stage, but our policies really didn't allow that. And so diving deep into the classwork, and at the same time having had the opportunity to get an internship at the Commerce Department at NTIA, and NTIA was in the midst of reviewing the president's separate satellite systems policy. So it was like the perfect marriage of my academic work linked to the internship and ultimately changing the US policy on separate satellite systems. So it was perfect.
So just sometimes being in the right place at the right time really does sort of lend your path.
Absolutely.
You've talked a little bit about what technology was like when you came to AU. When I came here, they were just wiring the campus for the internet, so if that gives you any context. But one of our shared bosses, I think Lara Irving, takes credit for the phrase digital divide. I'm not sure if that's true. Maybe you might know. But working to close the digital divide is one of the ITU's core missions. Where do we stand collectively on connecting the world?
We're halfway there. So 3.7 billion people not connected in the world's least developed countries. You have 46 least developed countries. 25% are connected, so 1 in 4 people is connected in the LDCs. We have, on the plus side, 93% of the world covered by a mobile broadband signal, but we have half the world that's not connected, so we're half done. And it's going to cost us at least $428 billion on the infrastructure side, but we also need to be investing in digital skills, in local content, local language solutions. We need to also focus not just on the infrastructure, but on ways to stimulate the demand side. The demand side is absolutely critical.
So let's talk a little bit about the pandemic. And again, thank everyone for coming and socially distancing as we needed to here. And obviously things on campus have changed. Last year we pivoted, everything was online. What's it been like for you at the ITU, and how has it changed work at the ITU? And what do you think it means for the organization going forward?
So I think it's important when we think about the pandemic that we remember how lucky we were because we were connected. For the ITU, we wanted to focus on helping maintain connectivity. We had some operators that reported 800% surges in traffic, so the infrastructure was, let's say, heavily tried and tested. The good news is it didn't collapse. So I think hats off to the tech sector and to all those operators out there. But we also had to focus on extending connectivity to those that didn't have it. So we put in place very quickly a number of initiatives. We launched this Reg for COVID platform. So regulators, policymakers, operators, even civil society could come forward and share what they were doing to help extend and maintain connectivity. So that sharing platform was, I think, very important. We also understood that safety and security was a big issue, especially for children. So you had 5-year-olds that had to go online for their classes. And so helping parents and teachers, we adapted our child online protection guidelines because of COVID and making sure that those young learners were going to be going online in a safe way and that their parents also knew what to look out for. We also understood that a huge challenge was the lack of digital skills. So some people were able to get a device or to get towards connectivity, but they lacked the digital skills. We had teachers that lacked the digital skills. They didn't know how to put their materials online. And so working with Cisco, with other partners, we launched these digital transformation centers to really push the digital literacy piece and try to try to close specifically that gap. With WHO, for example, and GSMA, we have a program called Be Healthy, Be Mobile. So we repurposed that program during COVID to make sure that we could get the health messaging information, try to counter the misinformation, disinformation that was out there, and get the health messages out to the communities that needed it most. So just some examples, I think, of how we stepped up to provide support to our members.
So in just a few minutes, you've talked about how much of this has been so important to so many people in so many different ways, and why this is something that's so necessary. What do you see as the main impediments to achieving universal global connectivity?
I would say probably the first is the cost. So $428 billion just for the infrastructure piece. We have to be creative. We have to find ways to incentivize investments. We have to find smart ways to unblock universal service funds. We have to bring together the MDBs, the IFIs. I think we have to bring all partners together and be creative about finding the right financing solutions. We have to remember that devices are prohibitively expensive to those that don't have them. Services are also very expensive. In some cases, that's due to high taxation on the part of governments. So the affordability piece, I think, is critical. The enabling environment piece is also really important. Some countries have not updated their regulatory and policy regimes. I think that's a key focus. And what we've also seen, again, linked to COVID, is how important governments approach this holistically. So they shouldn't think about digital as its own silo or just as something with education. They really need to be thinking about digital strategies that cut across all sectors of the economy. So I think that's a critical piece. And again, on the demand side, we need to shift the focus from not just focusing on infrastructure, but focusing on ways to stimulate interest and to drive usage in services.
So for those of you that are not steeped in this technology world, there are lots of acronyms. I'll apologize now for those. And if anybody needs a primer later, we can try to help you with that, but there's nothing but acronyms. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the New York agenda. And this week is the General Assembly. President Biden and other world leaders are up addressing and talking about what needs to happen collectively in our world. In 2015, the UN adopted what are called the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. Doreen is wearing the ever-present little pin that explains those a little bit. Let's talk about that, and why is technology important in achieving the SDGs, and what kind of change have you seen at the UN since these were first adopted in 2015, which I cannot believe, what was like 7 years ago? Time really does go by fast.
So before the SDGs were adopted, many of us, and some in this room were part of it, tried to advocate for a specific goal on connectivity. We called it SDG 18, some call it SDG 0, because we felt that it should be a goal in and of itself. Ultimately, that was not accepted. We got 4 little targets to education, health, gender, and partnership. And I think there was quite a lot of frustration at the time. But what's happened since then is that, well, COVID. I think there's no doubt right now that digital is going to be key to achieving the SDGs. When the progress report on the SDGs was released in July, the Secretary General said it was worrying. It's a worrying picture. COVID has set us back dramatically. And I think for us, the only way that we can get the SDGs back on track is through digital technologies. And if you think about education, for example, we'll never have enough teachers. If you think about healthcare, we're never going to have enough doctors. So how can we use technology and leverage it to actually get those services to those that need it? So I think it's fundamental. I think there's been a big shift in how technology is perceived. I think it's no longer a nice to have, it's essential. And I think that's a game-changing moment. But we really need to bring the global community together collaboratively, as Chris was calling for, and connect the unconnected.
So the idea of connectivity is hotly debated here in Washington and is caught up in all the different financing bills that are being discussed in Congress for the rest of the month. Are governments themselves taking full advantage of digital transformation to improve services for their citizens?
I think we're seeing much more now. Again, I think that COVID pushed governments to understand that they have to leverage digital transformation. We saw countries that had no e-government services and no intent to have e-government services. But with all of their people at home, they understood that in order to keep their economies and societies thriving, they needed to roll out very quickly e-government and other services. So I think COVID has been a huge accelerant to push countries in terms of their digital transformation processes. Obviously, not all governments are there. Some are better than others in terms of what they've achieved. But I think we have a pretty good roadmap. We have some interesting work that we've done with Estonia, with Germany, with the UN Foundation's Digital Impact Alliance, putting together reusable digital building blocks that countries can then take and adapt when it comes to eGov services and really get things up and running pretty quickly. So I think there's lots of exciting innovations that have happened during COVID that we can leverage.
So all these networks that we're talking about and the importance of them, they're owned and operated and run by companies. So how can businesses and government work together more effectively to achieve connectivity and to meet these goals?
So I think the private sector has a key role to play. I think no single government, no single organization, no single company can do it alone. I think that we need each other, so the private sector has a critical role to play. We have just launched something linked to our World Telecommunications Development Conference called Partner to Connect. And so we've put together a digital coalition, an alliance of private sector, civil society, academia, governments, UN, to focus on connecting people, empowering communities, building digital ecosystems and incentivizing investments. And what's different about this Partner to Connect program is that we're not asking for words. I think we're kind of done talking. It's got to be about action. And so we want commitments, we want pledges, we want people to come forward and commit to what they're going to do so that when we get to 2030, we have a fully connected world. So I think, to come back to your question, the private sector has much to offer and much to do.
So appropriate, given that we're on a university campus, I think, but one group that's been particularly affected by the digital divide and the impact of COVID is our global youth. You mentioned students having to go to Starbucks or whatever to get internet access, but how does the lack of access and use affect the world's youth, and how do we bring them online, not just here in the United States, but around the world?
Well, since the pandemic started, we had 1.6 billion learners that were impacted. And our studies show us that 2/3 of the world's learners actually didn't have home access to the internet. So they didn't have a computer at home. And you had situations where if a family was lucky, they had one smartphone, maybe they had 4 children, and there was a situation where it was almost impossible for young people to continue their learning. Things are improving slightly. It's good to see students back on campus here. But that impact is going to be felt for a long time, and regrettably, evidence shows that many girls that were impacted will actually never go back to school. So young women were more adversely affected than young boys. But we have to remember that youth, in particular in developing countries, in particular in Africa, it's a growing demographic that needs to be included in all discussions, especially on technology policy. We need to have young people at the table. We need to understand their concerns. We need to hear their voices. We have created something called Generation Connect. We've set up a board. We have 6 youth groups, 1 for each region, and we're inviting young people to engage with us, participate in our events. We don't want them to just be recipients of what we cook up, but we actually want them to be there at the creation, at the design, and then, of course, ultimately to benefit. So I think there's so much to do for young people.
So you've talked about the digital gender divide as well, and it's a message that's especially relevant given you're the first woman to hold an elected ITU role, which, again, I still can't believe. And I will say, for several people that were in the audience when Doreen actually won, the entire U.S. delegation of about 100 people, I think, burst into tears of excitement. So it was a particularly proud day, I know, for you and your family, but for all of us as well. But so given that special role that you have in this opportunity, what are you personally doing to try to help bridge the digital gender divide?
So the digital gender divide, it's a complicated divide because it's an access divide. So 48% of women are online, 55% of men are online. So there's that access issue, that's a problem. There's also the digital skills issue. Women and girls have less opportunities to actually get the digital skills that they need. Then it comes to women in the tech sector. That's where we're not doing well at all. We don't have girls taking up an interest in STEM or STEAM, so they're not taking the university studies. The ones that are enter the tech sector maybe. They usually leave after 2 to 3 years. And so when it comes to leadership positions, it's a small pool to draw from. 13% of the world's ministers are women. 13% of the world's regulators are women. It's interesting, it's the same percentage. And of course, in the tech sector, 20 to 30% of the workforce are women. So much more needs to be done. The Equals Initiative was mentioned before, and AU has been a big player in that. We put together a global partnership. We have 100+ members now, and we're focusing on those 3 pieces of the divide, access, skills, and leadership, to really try to get more girls connected, get the skills out there. We have a Girls Can Code initiative in Africa, in the Americas, where we're teaching coding. We have our Girls in ICT Day. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary. It's about exposing careers in the technology sector to young girls. So that's another area we're focusing. We have our new Women in Cyber program, which is another exciting piece to try to excite and inspire women to follow in terms of the path of cybersecurity. The cybersecurity and the AI fields are particularly poorly represented by women. So we're trying to focus on those areas. I think we're seeing some progress, but we do have quite a long way to go.
So just to put in a plug for Doreen and her team kicked off a Women in Cyber mentorship program this year, and I was fortunate enough to participate. And it was just an amazing experience, and the women that I got to work with will be great friends forever. And I'm very proud of the things they've already been able to do since this program. So these programs are really impacting people and are really meaningful for people as they go forward. So we've talked a little bit about, or hinted that the WTDC is happening next year. It's the World Telecom Development Conference, and it's the development sector's conference every 4 years. What are the objectives of the meeting next year? Will it be different from previous events in the wake of COVID and the immense pressure to boost connectivity? I feel like you've been working on connectivity for so long, and now the rest of the world is catching up. What does that mean for your conference next year?
I think it's an opportunity for the conference, of course. Organizationally, we may have some continued challenges because of COVID, but I think the conference next year is a huge opportunity. The need to connect the 3.7 billion people that are not connected, the urgency is there. Nobody wants to wait, the time is now, and so I believe that conference has the opportunity to carve out a new development roadmap. It's the opportunity to change things and to put in action programs that can show results, programs that can make an impact, and programs that will make a difference to the lives of those not connected. So I think there's tremendous potential and opportunity. There's tremendous interest on the part of governments at the highest level, so I think we can leverage that great interest. The private sector, civil society, academia, I think everyone is excited about that conference being, the sort of game changer that we need within the ITU to sort of shift things and focus on digital now. We've added some new elements, which is exciting. We've created a network of women, so to try to bring more women delegates to the conference, which is so important. To try to encourage women to volunteer for leadership positions in the conference, chairing the conference, vice chairs, working group chairs, all of those things. So we're trying to work through our network of women. We have 6 regional groups for that as well, and that's going to be very exciting. Before the conference actually kicks off, and looking forward to the students here being engaged, we have a youth summit. So our Generation Connect Youth Summit is the first time we'll ever have a youth summit preceding our development conference, and the youth will be making a declaration into the WTDC, which is also super exciting. And then, of course, the Partner to Connect piece that I mentioned before will run in parallel to the conference. And so our hope is that when the conference ends, we actually have a fully funded, supported roadmap that we can start to implement. We'll hit the ground running the day after the conference finishes.
So you're sensing a theme here, not just words. We're talking about action. So anyone have any questions they want to ask Doreen? I'll open it up to folks if anyone has a question or two. Just start by introducing yourself. I don't know if we're going to have a microphone. There's a hand in the back. And I can repeat the question if we need be, but please introduce yourself and then ask your question. Oh, here comes your mic. Hold on.
Hi, I'm Lauren Zabrick. I run the cyber project at the Harvard Kennedy School's Belfer Center, and I'm also a co-founder of Share the Mic in Cyber, which is an online movement dedicated to dismantle systemic racism in cyber. My first question is, so I have kind of two. I have a student who is from Africa, really interested in tech policy, and I'm wondering how she can get connected to your Generation Connect initiative. And then second, as part of your agenda to connect the world, what sorts of things are you looking at in terms of helping people to secure themselves, to know how to combat the threats that really target us every day? Thank you.
So just to clarify the first part of your question, you said you had a student from, I couldn't hear that part. Okay. So I would be happy afterwards to give you more information. You can always send an email to generationconnect@itu.int. But certainly welcome more participation in our regional groups, and of course, ultimately, the Youth Summit itself. In terms of the sort of security safety piece, we have a number of programs. I mentioned the child online protection work that we've done. So we've developed a series of guidelines. It's been through a partnership, which I think is something important to emphasize. So they've been developed by governments, by academics. I think, Derek, you were involved in some of them as well. We had even Facebook part of the group that went through and helped to develop these guidelines. And so we have guidelines for parents, for educators, for policymakers, for the private sector. And I think those guidelines are extremely helpful and have been put into local languages around the world. We also developed a mascot for younger audiences. And so we have some animated infographics, and we've tried to adapt the content so it's useful to different age groups. But on top of that, we also run cyber drills. So we do tabletop exercises, simulations of cyber attacks. What do you do It was focused largely pre-COVID on physical trainings, and it was largely focused on government groups. But because of COVID and we had to do everything online, we've also opened up the audience to the public at large as well. So I think that kind of training component is really critical in keeping us all safe.
Derek, oh, there you go. There's a microphone next to you.
Thank you very much. Is it okay with the mask on? So congratulations, Doreen. I'm really happy that you're here. I'm Derek Cogburn, professor, I guess it sounds a little muffled, professor in SIS and Kogat School of Business, and just really happy that you're here. I think everybody knows I'm also executive director of our Institute on Disability and Public Policy. And I thought that the question that you asked, Fiona, about the intersection between the SDGs and ICTs is really interesting and important. And there's a very interesting matrix that looks at an overlay of the WSIS outcomes and the SDGs and looks at how each of those SDGs can be supported by ICTs. There's another area that I think is equally important, and I haven't seen as much of a matrix that looks at the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and access issues to enable full participation in all areas of society. Is there anything that you can say to think about how we can continue to facilitate and promote the idea of access for persons with disabilities and impact on SDGs as well?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And yeah, maybe it would be useful to add on top of that SDG WSIS matrix, the convention. And I think raising the point about persons with disabilities is critical. I mean, of course, when we talk about inclusive tech, it's not just women and youth, it's marginalized groups and persons with disabilities, and we have to keep that in mind. And of course, when it comes to the design and creation of technologies, we need those voices at the table if we're going to be developing things that can actually improve and enhance their lives. So that piece is so critical. I think we can do more. We work closely with different groups, of course, the UN in New York and with WHO and others. And actually during COVID, we came out with an adapted guideline as well to help persons with disabilities in their online experience. And of course, as you know, at the ITU, we provide captioning somewhat systematically these days. And we're starting also to increase use of sign language as well. But I think much can be done, and I think certainly technology has so many solutions that can benefit persons with disabilities.
Anyone else have a question? I see a hand in the back as well. It looks like Waldo.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Walda Roseman. I chair the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation. As you know, Arthur C. Clarke was behind those 3 satellites and global satellite communications, and worked many years at the ITU with policy and promoting women, starting promoting women in 1992, so this has taken a little while, and youth in 2001. Very proud of you, obviously. And will be extraordinarily proud when you become the Secretary General. So my question, though, is, Doreen, as a change maker, as you are, with a 168-year-old institution, and I believe it's still the only UN agency with 5 elected officials, each who come with their own agendas, how do you see leading this organization in new directions where you think that's necessary?
Well, thank you, Walda, and thank you for being here. Walda and I met 30 plus years ago, and I think Walda can certainly be credited with bringing many, many good things to the ITU in terms of girls and STEM and youth and so many things. And thank you, Walda. Well, the ITU is the oldest organization in the UN system. We're older than the UPU, the Universal Postal Union. We're much older than the UN itself. And we're the only UN agency that has the specific focus on information and communication technologies. And I think at a moment when the whole world has put the spotlight on connectivity, like this is the ITU moment. This week in New York, everybody's talking about the SDG moment. Well, I think this is the ITU moment. I think this is the moment for the ITU to step up and help the world connect the unconnected. The fact that we have 5 elected officials and a federal structure, I actually think is something that can be leveraged. I think when you understand the different pieces of the ITU, from the development focus to the standards focus and ensuring interoperability of equipment and services, and of course the radio communications piece and spectrum and orbital slots, I think when we're working to assist countries that need us most, it's not one piece that's needed, it's the whole piece. It's the whole of the ITU that's needed. And so I think that there are many opportunities, should I be successful in my pursuit, to really leverage the whole of the organization and to step up and take that ITU moment.
So maybe one more question from the audience, if there is one. Right here, Sasha.
Hi, thank you so much. Again, I wanted to add my thanks, Sasha O'Connell, School of Public Affairs here at AU. I know our students, some of whom are here and many who are online, are as inspired as we all are by you and your service. And as you know, we are so lucky to work with students who feel that call to service every day. I was hoping to ask on their behalf, do you have specific recommendations on how they best prepare for a career in this field, who want to come in your sort of wake and follow in your footsteps? Are there classes to take? Are there life experiences to have? Are there skills to build to not just get those jobs, but to be really successful and impactful when they get there?
That's a great question. So my son joined me today. I'm happy he's here. And he can confirm that with my children, I try to insist, they didn't necessarily like this at the time, that when they were younger, that they did coding. So I put them in coding camps. I put them in weekend coding things, right, Alex? And then, of course, my husband and I were whatever they wanted to pursue in university, obviously was up to them. But I continue to insist, try to take at least one computer science class. Do something. I think that those digital tools are fundamental. No matter what you do, I think those digital pieces are really, really critical and can ultimately set you apart when you're applying for jobs. I think the importance of networking is critical. So try to meet as many people as you can and stay in touch with people. I think that COVID has also presented opportunities to follow virtual things all the time, some at the same time. And so taking advantage of the fact that most things are open, most things are actually free, and learn as much as you can in areas that might interest you, I think is something else that can be valuable. And of course, being a UN fonctionnaire, I think having a second language is fundamental, and it's never too late. I didn't speak a word of French when I arrived in Geneva. My kids say I still don't speak French. They make fun of my accent. But I think that the second language, at least, is also something critical. And I think also when allowed, travel. I think it's so important for people to see how others live. If we want to develop or we want to serve and help people, we need to have an understanding of how they live. And so to be able to travel and meet people and visit places, I think is also something so important.
Well, thank you very much, Doreen. This has been an interesting conversation, at least for me, and I hope for everyone that's here. As you can tell, we here at American University are just dying to lay claim to the first woman Secretary General of the ITU. So we're here with you as you launch forward with the administration on your campaign. We're hoping that it happens. The ITU, an institution that's probably the most important institution that people don't know about, actually, in terms of communication. So we wish you well on that. But I will let you have the last word if there's any last things you want to say before we turn it back over to Diana to wrap up.
Well, I mean, thank you, Fiona. Really, it's such an honor to receive the award today and to be back at American University. It's been far too long, and I think I'm just so grateful that I had the experience in this program that provided me with the foundations that I needed to be able to excel. So I'm very grateful and excited about the future. I think the Secretary General last week said that the world is at a moment of breaking down or breaking through. I'm an optimist at heart, and I really think that this is the moment to connect the dots, as Chris was saying, collaborate, and really work for a digital breakthrough, and a digital breakthrough that can bring all the opportunities that digital has to all the world's people. I think we can do much to serve humanity. Thank you.
Well, thank you. This was just an extraordinary conversation, and I think you can see why we selected Doreen as our inaugural recipient of the Outstanding Technology Policy Changemaker Award. Uplift, inspire, and drive change. I think we owe her another round of applause. I want to do two things to close us out this morning. The first is to thank all of you. First, I want to thank Fiona and Doreen for that just amazing conversation. I want to thank all of our speakers here this morning. I certainly want to thank everyone who helped us to organize this event today. Our fearless leaders, Sasha O'Connell, Fiona, Nanette Levinson, who is not here with us this morning, but certainly I know she's watching online, KornerStone, all of the members of the ultimately amazing SPA events team. Our media, our development office, I mean, just everyone who, this truly, as we think about holistic and we think about collaboration and we think about efforts that truly bring institutions together, this was an opportunity for us as an entire university to work together to bring something to you that we truly passionately believe in. So first, I want to thank everyone. I also want to thank you, our audience. For those of you who joined us on simulcast, thank you for getting up early. Thank you for watching. For those of you who braved the storm, at one point the rain was going sideways, and I thought, you know, if I drive through that puddle, I'm not sure I'll come out, but I'm going. And I know you did the same, so thank you for braving the weather and coming and joining us. I will take both of those actions, your bravery in coming here, your bravery in getting up early to join the simulcast. I will take both of those actions as evidence that you are ready to engage with us, that you are dedicated to acting. And so my second ask is to ask you to engage with us. Our policy, or our slogan here at American University for our campaign is change can't wait, and I can't think of another area where that is not more true. Whether we're talking about the individuals who are developing the technology, whether we're talking about the individuals who are using the technology, whoever we're talking about, every single person that touches the digital society and digital economy is touched by technology policy. The only way that it can truly serve us all is if we are all invested in the development, implementation, and use of those policies. And so my call to action to every single one of you is to engage with us here at the university, whether you are interested in education. We need you to get into those K-12 classrooms. We need you to help us devise strategies to develop the next generation of individuals. Whether your passion is in healthcare, we need you to help us help individuals understand how the technology relates to their ability to enable themselves to be healthy and to engage with their medical providers. Whether it is a passion about the economy and digital currency, we need you. Sustainability, we need you. Every single thing that we are doing as a global society is tied to technology policy. So those of you who know me know I don't sleep. Those of you who don't know me, I'm telling you, I don't sleep. So that means that I am ready to engage with every single one of you on how you want to work with us to enable an inclusive technology policy world. I would ask one other thing, and that is to follow along for Doreen's campaign. You have a hashtag, what is it? Hashtag Doreen for SG. Follow it, tweet about it, tell your friends and your neighbors, tell your kids, hashtag Doreen for SG. And we will be here this time next year. We'll do a celebratory engagement to celebrate Doreen, who will be the next Secretary General of the International Telecommunications Union. Thank you very much.